The sand wasn't just sand anymore. It was powdered glass, gritted between my teeth, scouring my raw knuckles as I clawed forward. Above, the sky wasn't black, but a churning, sulfur yellow hell vomited by the guns. The air vibrated with a physical force that shook the very marrow in my bones. Somewhere ahead, a German machine gun spat its venom, stitching the night with tracer fire that lit up the desolate expanse like a demonic strobe. "Down, you bastards! Down!" Sergeant O'Reilly's roar, raw and desperate, barely cut through the inferno. I pressed my face into the stinking, blood-warm sand of the anti-tank ditch, the rough canvas of my greatcoat rasping against my cheek. The smell of cordite, sweat, and something acridly organic fear, or worse, choked me. We were pinned, trapped in this man-made gullet under the most concentrated artillery barrage I'd ever witnessed. The Jerrys weren't just shelling us. They were trying to scour the earth clean of our presence. This was it, I thought, the cold certainty settling like lead in my gut, the Alamein line, and it felt like the end of the world. Albert Schmidt, that's me, 21 years old, from a small town outside Hamburg, but fighting for Australia with the 9th Infantry Division. 26th Battalion left Germany in 1939 with my parents, seeking a life away from the rising madness. Founded in Sydney, became me a carpenter. Then came the war. The call came. My English was decent enough, and they needed men. So here I was, Corporal Albert Schmidt, rifleman, somewhere in the Egyptian desert, October 1942. The heat was a constant enemy, baking the sand into shimmering waves during the day, freezing it into sharp crystals at night. Dust coated everything, my Lee-Enfield No.4 rifle, the webbing digging into my shoulders, my face. We'd been training relentlessly for months, digging miles of trenches and anti-tank ditches, laying minefields in the scorching sun. Montgomery had taken over the 8th Army. His plow, a massive, grinding assault to break Rommel's Afrika Korps once and for all. The target, the heavily fortified positions around the railway halt of El Alamein, just 60 miles from Alexandria. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Rommel broke through, Egypt, the Suez Canal, the Middle East oil fields, all vulnerable. The whole Allied position in the Mediterranean could collapse. The weeks before the battle were a mix of exhausting preparation and tense anticipation. We knew something big was coming. The air buzzed with activity. More trucks arrived carrying ammunition, food, water, precious water, rations strictly. Engineers worked tirelessly, reinforcing our positions, laying more mines 1,000 off them, British Tellermine, and our own Piat anti-tank charges. We practiced our drills over and over, advancing in bounds, using cover, fire, and movement. The British artillery, a colossal force of hundreds of guns, was being massed. You could see the barrels glinting in the sun, mile after mile. The desert was our vast, open-air factory of death. We knew Rommel was weak. His supply lines were stretched thin across the Mediterranean, crippled by the Royal Navy. He had few tanks left, mostly Italian M13/40s, and his panzers were worn down. His infantry, the 15th and 21st Panzer Divisions, the 90th Light Division, and the Italian Folgore and Pavia divisions, were dug deep, behind belts of barbed wire, mines, and concrete Rommel's Asparagus anti-tank obstacles. But they were veterans. Tough, experienced fighters. We respected their fighting spirit, even as we despised their cause. The night before the attack, October 22nd, was electric. A full moon bathed the desert in an eerie, silvery light. There was a strange quiet, a holding of breath. We checked our gear endlessly. Lee-Enfield rifle, bayonet, entrenching tool, water bottle, ammunition bandoliers, 50 rounds, always, Mills bomb grenades, field dressing. My greatcoat, this enchiladas the desert nights. We ate a hot meal of bully beef and biscuits, the last proper meal for a while. Sergeant O'Reilly, a gruff Irishman who'd seen action in Greece and Crete, gathered us. Listen up, lads, he said, his voice low but intense. Monty's got a big boot ready to stamp. It's gonna be hell. Worse than hell. But we've got the guns, we've got the plan, and we've got the spirit. Remember your training. Look after your mate, and give the bastards hell. For Australia, for Britain, for the 8th Army. Now get some rest if you can. I lay down in the trench, the cold sand seeping through my uniform. Sleep wouldn't come. My mind raced, picturing the coming chaos. I thought of my parents back in Sydney, safe for now. I thought of the Jerrys, not just faceless enemies, but men like me, caught in this global nightmare. The thought was fleeting, quickly swallowed by the anticipation of the storm. The silence shattered. It wasn't a roar. It was a physical blow. The entire British 8th Army artillery opened up. Thousands of guns, from massive 5.5-inch and 25-pounders to heavy 6-inch and 8-inch howitzers, unleashed hell. The sky lit up like a permanent lightning storm. The ground beneath us heaved and buckled. Sand, rock, and shrapnel rained down. The noise was beyond comprehension, a wall of sound that vibrated every cell in your body. We crouched low, helmets pulled down, praying a shell didn't find our specific spot. The air thickened with cordite smoke and the smell of hot metal and earth. Then, after what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 20 minutes, the fire lifted. The eerie silence that followed was almost as terrifying. Go! 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 O'Reilly screamed, his voice hoarse. We scrambled out of the trenches, rifles ready, and began the advance across the open ground towards the German lines about 500 yards away. The first wave was engineers and mine-clearing tanks, the Funnies, Churchill tanks equipped with flails. They churned through the minefields, exploding mines in showers of dirt and metal. Behind them, we infantrymen advanced in short rushes, diving into shell craters whenever possible. The Jerrys were quick to recover. Their artillery opened up again, but this time it was counter-battery fire, targeting our guns. Machine guns crackled from their forward positions. Bullets kicked up dust around us. Spread out. Don't bunch up, someone yelled. I saw a lad from my section, young Tommy Jenkins, go down with a cry as a burst caught him in the leg. Medic, O'Reilly barked, already dragging him behind a crater. I kept moving, firing short, controlled bursts towards muzzle flashes. My Lee-Enfield felt hot in my hands. We hit the first line of wire. It was a nightmare. Snagging on T-barbs, we became easy targets. O'Reilly was shouting orders, directing us around gaps. Bangalore torpedoes. Get them ready. Volunteers scrambled forward, placing the long tubes of explosives under the wire. Fire. A deafening roar, wire and sand blasted skywards. We surged through into the first German trenches. It was close, brutal, hand-to-hand combat. I bayoneted one German soldier as he tried to reload his Karabiner 98K rifle. His eyes widened in shock and pain. I turned away, the metallic tang of blood filling my nostrils. Others fell around me, Germans and Australians. The fighting was vicious, confused, in the flickering light of very flares and muzzle flashes. We cleared the first position, taking prisoners, exhausted, scared young Germans from the 164th Infantry Regiment. Move 'em back, O'Reilly ordered. But this was just the first outer ring. The real fortress awaited. The next day, October 24th, saw us attacking the Devil's Gardens, a minefield so dense they were nicknamed for their lethality. We advanced slowly, painfully, under covering fire from our artillery and tanks. We hit more wire, more trenches. The fighting intensified. Casualties mounted. Our own tanks, the Crusaders and Grants, were taking hits from German 88mm guns, which Rommel had expertly cited as anti-tank weapons. I saw a Grant erupt in a fireball, its crew incinerated. The heat was immense. We were taking heavy fire from the Italian positions too. The Pavia division held a strong point called Point 29. The Italians fought hard, defending their ground fiercely. We took the point after a fierce, close-quarters battle, bayonets and grenades doing the work where rifles couldn't. We captured more prisoners, including Italian officers. They looked shell-shocked, but defiant. The next few days blurred into a continuous nightmare of attack, counterattack, digging in, and attacking again. We were fighting for every inch of the unforgiving desert. The Jerry's counterattacked repeatedly, trying to punch holes in our advance. We held firm. On October 25th, we reached the final objective, the Ruwaisit Ridge. This was the key. From here, the Germans could be pushed back towards the coast. The fighting was savage. We were up against the elite Folgore Parachute Division Italians, but tough, highly motivated paratroopers. They fought like devils. We were exhausted, running on adrenaline, rations, and grim determination. My water bottle was empty. My throat was raw. My rifle barrel was hot from constant firing. We finally secured the ridge late on the 26th, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and crimson. The Jerrys fell back, leaving behind shattered equipment and the dead. Silence descended, broken only by the moans of the wounded, the distant thud of our own guns shelling their retreating columns. The ridge was ours. We'd done it, but the cost was staggering. The battalion was decimated. Less than half of us were left, walking wounded mixed with the unscathed. The ground was littered with bodies, ours, theirs, British, German, Italian. The smell was overwhelming: decay, cordite, blood. We worked through the night, collecting our dead and wounded, digging graves in the sand. O'Reilly found me near a knocked-out German PZKPFW-3 tank. He looked old, his face etched with exhaustion and grief. "Schmidt," he said, his voice thick. "Jenkins didn't make it." "Lost too much blood." I nodded, unable to speak. Tommy, so full of life just days before. We buried him quickly, a simple cross made from a rifle butt and a piece of wood. The next day, October 27th, we saw the full scale of the victory. The desert was littered with destroyed German and Italian tanks, Panzers, M13/40s, burned out hulks smoking in the sun. Abandoned equipment everywhere. Prisoners streamed back in their thousands, exhausted, demoralized German soldiers from the 15th and 21st Panzer Divisions and the Italians. The scale was immense. Allied losses were heavy, over 13,500 casualties in the first 3 days for the 8th Army, but the Axis losses were catastrophic. By the Tumut battle officially ended on November 4th, Rommel had lost around 59,000 men killed, wounded, or captured, and nearly 500 tanks. The Afrika Korps was shattered. We had broken the back of the Axis in North Africa. We didn't celebrate much. There was a grim satisfaction, a sense of hard-won justice. But the weight of the dead hung heavy. We moved forward, securing the ground, mopping up pockets of resistance. The Jerrys were in full retreat, heading west towards Libya and Tunisia. We followed, but slowly. The desert stretched out, vast and empty now, filled only with the echoes of battle and the dust of retreating enemies. We were tired, but we were advancing. The tide had turned, decisively, in North Africa. It felt like the beginning of the end. Standing on the Ruwaisit Ridge, looking out over the vast, empty desert stretching towards the setting sun, I felt a profound mix of emotions. Pride, yes. We'd faced hell itself and prevailed. Relief the immediate terror was over. But mostly a deep, aching sadness. The cost was too high. Tommy Jenkins, O'Reilly, who was wounded a week later but survived, thousands of others whose names I'd never know, they were gone, buried in this sandy graveyard. And the enemy, those young German soldiers I'd killed or seen killed. They weren't monsters, not most of them. They were soldiers caught in a war they didn't start, fighting for a cause that was monstrous. The thought was a cold stone in my stomach. Alamein was a turning point. It proved that the British Empire and its allies could defeat the seemingly invincible Wehrmacht in open battle. It shattered Rommel's legend. It secured Egypt and the Middle East. It paved the way for the invasion of Sicily and Italy, and ultimately, the liberation of Europe. It was a victory forged in the crucible of the desert, won by ordinary men, Australians, Britons, Indians, New Zealanders, South Africans, free French who endured unimaginable hardship and fought with incredible courage. But it was also a brutal reminder of the sheer scale of the war and the cost of victory. Every shell fired, every bomb dropped, every bullet that found its mark took a life, shattered a family. I thought of my parents in Sydney, safe, but unaware of the horror I'd witnessed. I thought of the friends I'd lost, forever etched in that desert. And I thought of the bigger picture. The war wasn't over. The fight against Nazi Germany and its allies would continue through Italy, France, and eventually Germany itself. The road ahead was long and bloody. But at Alamein, we hadn't just won a battle. We'd proven that the tide was turning. The darkness that had engulfed Europe was not eternal. We had push-headed back, here in the burning sands of Egypt. And that, I knew, was a victory worth the price. The desert had taken its toll, but it had also forged us, hardened us, and given us hope. We had broken the line. Now, we had to break the enemy.